Up until 1966, one of the most defining characteristics of being a Catholic was our abstinence from meat, not just on Fridays during Lent, but every Friday. For many, it was a devotional practice that was so embedded in our culture that you couldn't imagine not doing it. It was like going to Mass on Sunday or saying grace before meals. And then it all just disappeared. From one day to the next, the church changed its mind, and we were no longer required to abstain from meat on Fridays. We could do or eat anything we wanted now. Or at least that's the way people understood what happened. What the church actually said was supposed to aid us in being more penitential on these days, not less. This is Catholicism in Focus. For our non-Catholic friends watching, it might be helpful to start out with an understanding of why we abstain from meat in the first place, and why we still do it during Lent. While cultural and economic conditions have changed a lot over the past few hundred years, for most of the history of the world, meat was always associated with celebration and feasts. Given the expense of meat, one only spilled the blood of an animal when it was absolutely worth it, because doing so rendered it useless in providing ongoing benefits like milk, wool, eggs, and labor. The spilling of blood also served as an important symbol for Christians, almost since the beginning. Since Christ shed his blood for us on Friday, we made it a practice not to shed any additional blood on that day. And for hundreds of years, this was the prevailing practice for Catholics. In fact, it was the law. Failing to abstain from meat on Friday was not just embarrassing, it carried with it the weight of sin, and one needed to go to confession prior to returning to Mass. So why did it all of a sudden change then? It seems like a pretty important devotion that bound us together. At the heart of the issue was the fact that meat had changed in significance over time. No longer a luxury item for most, and with so many other good options for food, abstinence failed to capture a penitential nature. That, and our modern understanding that fish also have blood and are often more expensive but are somehow okay. Put these two things together, and what the church realized was that most were continuing to follow the law with no connection to what it was supposed to represent. While still a powerful devotion for some, for most it was at best an empty practice and at worst an idol of faith. So there you go. It doesn't make sense anymore, so we just got rid of it. No, not exactly. In 1966, Pope Paul VI promulgated an apostolic exhortation on penance, clarifying the church's teaching, reorganizing the laws of practice, and most importantly, giving authority to local communities to set their own norms. It is up to the bishops, gathered in their episcopal conferences, to establish the norms, which in their pastoral solicitude and prudence, and with the direct knowledge they have of local conditions, they consider the most opportune and efficacious. It was a wonderful example of Rome reminding us that we are the universal church, not the uniform church. Why in a global world with multiple cultures and expressions of faith would we continue with a one-size-fits-all mentality? So what did the bishops of the United States say? Friday itself remains a special day of penitential observance throughout the year. Friday should be, in each week, something of what Lent is in the entire year. For this reason, we urge all to prepare for that weekly Easter that comes with each Sunday, by freely making of every Friday a day of self-denial and mortification in prayerful remembrance of the Passion of Jesus Christ. In other words, the significance of Friday didn't change at all. We're still supposed to maintain a spirit of devotion to Christ's Passion and make it present in our lives each Friday. While there's no specific practice required to do that, something is still required. Because really, there are so many other, even better ways to remember the Passion and to be a sign of Christ in the world than taking your pepperonis off your pizza or eating lobster instead of a burger. In fact, the letter even goes on to make a number of great recommendations. It would bring great glory to God and good to souls if Fridays found our people doing volunteer work in hospitals, visiting the sick, serving the needs of the aged and lonely, instructing the young in the faith, participating as Christians in community affairs, and meeting our obligations to our families, our friends, our neighbors, and our community, including our parishes, with a special zeal born of the desire to add the merit of penance to the other virtues, exercised in good works, born of living faith. What a world it would be if our faith led us to do these things. While the uniform practice of abstaining from meat on Fridays was an easy way to ensure that all the faithful did something, and it may even have significance for some today, it often failed to produce the fruit that the church desired. Far from removing the practice altogether and telling us to do anything we want, the church revealed its great wisdom in 1966 by empowering us to take responsibility for our own faith, asking us not to simply follow the letter of some law that didn't mean anything to us, but to live the spirit of that law in a way that would bring the greatest glory to God. In that way, the practice may have changed, but the essential nature of what it means to be a Catholic Christian remains the same. What will you do to keep the spirit of Christ's passion alive every week? Thanks for watching this episode of Catholicism in Focus. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and check out the rest of Breaking in the Habit for some other great series and all that this ministry has to offer, including blog posts, weekly Instagram videos, tweets, pictures, and even a book. Thanks to Sheila Noble and all the patrons on Patreon who make all of this possible.